All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me with this mic. I'm Susan Gibbons. I'm Vice Provost and the Neely Dean of the River Campus Libraries. And it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to our Neely series. The Neely series was made possible through the generosity of Andrew and Janet Dayton Neely. And they provided the funding through an endowment that year after year allows us to bring great speakers to campus and provides an opportunity for both the university community and the greater Rochester community to come together in the library and hear some wonderful, thought-provoking talks. The Neely series has 2 more talks this year. On March 4th, renowned physician and best-selling author Abraham Verghese will be here. And then on April 22nd, poet Arthur Z. will share how he brings strands from American Indian arts, classical Chinese poetry, and Japanese culture into his own unique style of poetry. So the bookmark you have on your chair has the information about the next speakers. Tonight's speaker is John Palattella, who is a UR alumnus with an MA and PhD in English. He is literary editor of The Nation, and his essays and reviews have been published in a wide array of prestigious publications, including the London Review of Books, the Washington Post, and the American Scholar. Tonight we have asked poet and critic James Longenbach to introduce John. James Longenbach is the Joseph Henry Gilmore Professor of English here at the University of Rochester, but he is also, along with Betty London, one of John's dissertation advisors. So we thought it would be very fitting tonight to sort of come full circle, where the teacher can now cede the podium to his students.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. I'm happy to say tonight that the fact that John Palatella earned a PhD in English from the University of Rochester in 1992 is one of the least interesting things about him, as it should be. Today, John is, as you know, the literary editor of The Nation, which is one of the crown jewels of American intellectual and literary culture. The magazine was founded by abolitionists in 1865, and it remains today as provocative and as responsible as ever, week by week by week. Needless to say, John's predecessors in this position have been extremely distinguished, but none of them has come to this position in exactly the way that John himself did. John is what every one of us academicians in the humanities wants to be. Someone who speaks to a wide audience about the most crucial and compelling issues confronting our culture today. But unlike most people who go to the trouble of getting a PhD, John did not become an academician. Instead, he became a writer, especially a writer about and a reviewer of a wide variety of contemporary poets, and most especially a reviewer of poets whose uncompromising artistry is very difficult to describe. John's reviews commanded attention because, first and foremost, they were themselves excellent writing. What makes a review excellent? There are 2 things, it seems to me, that are the mark of a badly written review. First, if you remember the reviewer more than the book reviewed. Second, if the review sparks a flurry of letters to the editor. For usually those letters are driven by fake controversy, by the reviewer's narcissistic preening at the expense of the book under review, whether the book is worthy of the attention or not. John does not write those kinds of reviews, and as the literary editor of The Nation, and unlike the editors of the New York Times Book Review, the New Republic, or the New Yorker, John never publishes those kinds of reviews. To read The Nation under his stewardship is to feel in touch with what is most serious, most pressing, and still most entertaining in American fiction, film, poetry, music, art, culture, and politics. And it is to feel, as one only dreams of feeling in academia, that the worlds of art, culture, and politics are always and inevitably the same world. So what a treat it is to have John Palatella back here in our clutches, back in a world to which he owes far less than we, as citizens of the world at large, now owe to him. Please welcome John Palatella.
Thank you very much, Jim, for that introduction. It's very nice to be back. It's nice to see familiar faces. I'd like to thank the Neely series for having me, and to everyone for coming out tonight. It's not the most pleasant weather tonight, so I really appreciate you coming out to hear what I consider myself to be a dinosaur these days, given what's happening in our culture. And I'm going to talk about magazines and newspapers and books. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, cool. As I told Jim, I'm most accustomed to being at my desk for like 8 hours a day, so this is a little peculiar for me to do. So we'll give it a whirl. Title of this talk is the slurry of ephemera. I don't know about you, but wading through the year-end newspaper and magazine digests of politics and culture made for very dreary reading. Some writers struggled to wring a drop of good news from a low, dishonest decade. Others strode to the bar and leveled indictments. Either way, it was a bad patch, an impossible task. Glossing 10 years of history in snippets of 500 or 300 words, the writers performed an exercise bound to turn any observation about a dishonest decade into the perfect expression of it. Seeking some solace, I picked up a book. In a matter of minutes, I read a passage that stopped me in my tracks. And here's the passage. Now that anyone is free to print whatever they wish, they often disregard that which is best and instead write merely for the sake of entertainment. What would best be forgotten, or better still, erased from all books. And even when they write something worthwhile, they twist it and corrupt it to the point where it would be much better to do without such books, rather than having 1,000 copies spreading falsehoods over the whole world. The sense of enjoying an overabundance of information yet feeling impoverished, the sense of helplessness before the need to spot relevant material in a slurry of ephemera, the sense of vertigo provoked by the realization that the present is becoming overwhelmingly and annoyingly accessible. I think many of us have had these reactions after spending just a little bit of time online. I know I certainly have. Now anyone is free to print whatever they wish. So much for putting aside capsule summaries of a low, dishonest decade. This could be someone talking about blogs, about Facebook, about Flickr, about YouTube, in not 500 words or 300 words, but 9, except that it wasn't. The pungent little Jeremiad was the handiwork of one Niccolo Perotti, a learned Italian classicist, writing to his friend Francesco Guianero in 1471, less than 20 years after the invention of the printing press. Now, I offer this anecdote not to suggest that past is prologue. Rather, I think it's important to underscore the importance of thinking historically, which is to say, taking a long view, sometimes a very long view, when trying to understand changes in deeply ingrained patterns in literary culture. I stumbled upon Perotti's plaint in an essay in Robert Darnton's excellent little book, The Case for Books, Past, Present, and Future. Rejecting the commonplace notion that digital technology has ushered in a new era, the so-called information age, Darnton argues that every age in which a new technology has altered patterns of writing and communication has been an age of information, and that in every such age, information has always been unstable.